a software engineer, a coder, a developer, or programmer, or no coder, or bubbler, or bubble developer, and why? Now, my first instinct or impulse here is to say, who gives a shit what you call yourself? It's more important about what you do, right? And I think that's most people's gut reaction because this is kind of a hard question to answer. How you kind of define what your job title is, if you do consider it that. But if I'm really being honest with myself, it is kind of important. It's kind of important to introduce yourself or put yourself out there in the right way so that people interpret you how you want to be interpreted. And a lot of that depends on context, right? Like, who are you talking to? Are you talking to just some random person on the street? Is this on your LinkedIn profile? Are you in a job interview? Like, all of those things may warrant something different. I suppose the most important thing is, like, does the person that you're conveying this information to understand what the hell you're talking about? Because if they don't, well, who cares what you call yourself? No one understands. So it comes from, like, where this started, and this kind of got me thinking, is from this. Hold up. Is from this tweet. And this is more in the developer context, right? The traditional coding context. That's where this comes from, and I think that's where most of these responses come from. And I think that's interesting to know because to me, like, even a field that's so clearly defined, there's still debate amongst what to call how people refer to themselves. So if they're questioning it still, what does that say for us? For us, no code people who are trying to define what these things even are, and are we a part of this community of larger developers? And look, like, right off the bat, I like to say I don't call myself. Roberto says I tried. I don't call myself any of these anymore. He's not happy with any of those titles. Ivan, I like software engineer. It sounds more serious than just a code programmer. Also, I could solder something or fix electricity at home. I guess I like to think I'm better than just a coder. Yeah, and that's something that I think people who know how to code kind of get a little bit of defensive about when you call them a coder. I think they'd rather be referred to as a developer or an engineer, because coding has an implication of, like, you're just, like, behind the keyboard all day. You're like almost a debugger, right? Like, you're just, like, hands on the keyboard all day. There's no abstract thought to what you're doing, which is never the case. Like, anyone who's doing this type of work is always, like, you're thinking. There's a lot of problem solving that needs to go into it. So the coder has even become kind of a dirty word in the development community. Like, no one wants to be referred to as a coder or a programmer. Those words, like, from what I hear, seem to be antiquated and not really indicative of what they actually do from day to day. So that's an interesting thing to me. That itself, even coder, is something that people don't want to. They don't want that in their job title. At the moment, I call myself a full-time student. However, when the time is right, I reckon I'll describe myself as either developer or software engineer. I love the phrase techie as well. Makes me feel like a cyber genius. Software engineer, I think of myself as an engineer. Helps me remember to continue to being creative and cultivating my skills. There you go. Like, that is a perfect example of someone who sees themselves as more as just hands on the keyboard typing in code. There's abstract reasoning and logic and problem solving, and software engineer encompasses more of those skills than just typing commands into whatever they're using. So, like, I think engineer seems to be, like, the go-to for traditional programmers. I don't think that they would sneeze at developer either, web developer. If you design systems and you're an engineer, if you if all you do is just convert algorithms and logic to code, then you're a programmer. Is there a job that is strictly this? I'm asking because I don't know. Is strictly just converting algorithms and logics to code, then you're a programmer? Hmm, I'm not sure. Now this becomes even weirder in for the people who are in, and I alluded to this before, but the people who are like they just exclusively work in bubble. And I'm going to try to define this in terms of like of what you do rather than what you are. I even have a hard time saying like I'm a developer or a software engineer. That's weird. I wouldn't introduce myself that way for the reason that probably for like self-conscious reasons, but more because I think like saying like I build apps or software is easier for most people to understand than I'm a bubble developer, right? They're gonna be like, well, what's bubble? And I also think that kind of pigeonholes you into one specific area. If that you may like it comes with a connotation. So just I think saying you're a software, you build software and apps for me that's easier for me to say, and it's easier for people in almost all contexts to understand. If you have any concept of like computers and building software and that kind of stuff, and most people do. So, but when I even think of back like in 2019 or 2019, I was actually at the bubble office. I remember this specifically, and I was like, I didn't know what to call myself, so I asked the people at the bubble office, like, can I change my LinkedIn profile to say bubble developer? And they're like, yeah, I guess. They didn't have like no, you're not a bubble developer yet, or you need to do this, this, and this to call yourself a bubble developer. They were just like, well, yeah, if you want to, go for it. They like, and that's how flexible it was to do that. So I don't think I was the first one to do it, but it definitely was not like now a lot of times if you're familiar with bubble and like someone says they're a bubble developer, a lot of people will know what that means. But when I first changed my LinkedIn profile to say that, it wasn't even clear what that meant. This I like developer, hacker, programmer, but again, like in what context are you gonna say all of that? Like, is that like, what do you do for a living? I'm a developer, hacker, programmer. It doesn't roll off the tongue. I really like to solve problems, no matter if it's with code, design, infra, or leadership. Leadership. See, solve problems, I think, is what anyone who is doing this type of work really does. If you're really being, if you want to get at the core of what all of these things have in common, it's that you're solving problems regularly. You're always solving problems. But you can't just say I'm a problem solver, because no one knows what that means. That could mean a thousand things. You could be a hitman, right? If you're like, I solve problems. Yeah, that's very vague and scary, kind of. Uh, it's weird to do the opposite. I intentionally don't identify as either of those. I prefer boring open term like problem solver. Yeah, like there you go, exactly. I don't know if that's boring. It's just so vague that like who's gonna know what that means? It can mean anything. It doesn't like you have to ask another like three follow-up questions to get at what this person does for a living and what context you should be thinking about. Patricia, depends on who I talk to. If someone asks me for my official title, I go with front engineer. At work, everyone knows this as devs. And when I know that people are not really tech savvy, I use web developer as it's easier to understand. So very important here. Like Patricia understands that this is very contextual, right? It matters of the context that you're in. And I think that's kind of where I'm thinking of this too. It's like really depends on who you're talking to. Same thing with Lucas here. Depending on who's asking, basically, I want to call myself software engineer, and I am one, however, only tech people to understand what this role is. Only, yeah, see, like, there you go. Only tech people understand what this role is. If you're only talking to tech people, sure, you can call yourself whatever you want, um, and they'll understand. I can also call myself a CTO, but then also, who am I the chief of? When I hire someone, I usually use the title CTO. So context. So toggling over to the no code side, I think that, of course, this question has to be asked, and everyone seems obsessed with this. This question. It's interesting to talk about, I guess. But it brings me to the term no code in general, which I think has to change. Now, I'm a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite because I say no code all the time, uh, because I don't have a better way to refer to this as a field. And I wish it wasn't separate from the coding community, but it seems like it has to be. I think by the name itself is what causes that division between people who build software with code and people who build software with no code. Like the name itself kind of defines that boundary, which is why I think it's a bad thing. And this article here, I think, breaks that down pretty well. Should we change the term no code? I'm just going to come out and say it. I hate the no code moniker or no code or no code. I have many gripes about how we've decided to name our section of the internet. It seems like I'm not the only one. See the replies to this tweet. Ooh, we got another tweet. Take a look at that after. All right. The problems with code having nothing to do with code, right? I think this is the real crux of the problem with no code. You're defining it against what it is, what it isn't, and not what it is. And also this just creates a bad thing in people's minds. It creates like code is bad. Like it's implied that code is bad, especially when you're a champion of no code. Like you're saying no code is great all the time. Like the implication that it gives people is like, well, then code must suck. Like because of that. And that's not what we should be doing. That's not at all what we should be doing. Although we can say that this is not the case, the name certainly feels like we're trying to edge out, even exclude programmers. Exactly. It makes it sound as if there's no place for code in our space, forgetting the irony, yes, the irony that code is what we output. Exactly. We are all working with code, and we should never forget that. There is code underneath everything that we do. How we feel about code and why we want to avoid it has, in fact, nothing to do with the code itself. Code is a language that helps us tell inanimate objects what to do so we don't have to do it. Our real frustration lies with what usually comes with software projects: overblown budgets, long delays, expensive maintenance costs. That's what we're saying no to, not the code. Yes, that is a perfect summary of the way that I feel about this. It's the all of the things that come with these, like endless debates about clean code and software projects that never could get off the ground because they weren't able to be coded at the time. Those are the things that we want to say no to, and that don't have to be the default path to a project. Those are the things that I think what no code is trying to show that there's an alternative path to. These issues have nothing to do with code per se, but are due to scope creep, poor planning, and underestimating difficulty of a task. And this is true in both coding and no coding communities. It's still hard to do that. You think no coders can plan out an entire app from start to finish and accurately budget how much and how long it's going to take? Hell no. Everyone struggles with that. Issues which, let me tell you, you are also very, very present in projects using visual development tools. Doesn't have the same ring to it, that's for sure. Yeah, visual programming. I know that's what Bubble wants to rename the space, but visual programming. It does just feel like you're, I guess, dragging and dropping things on a screen, like visual. And I don't know if that's necessarily what it encompasses either. I don't know. I do like visual programming better than no code. But I don't love visual programming either. And I don't have a better answer for this. So, F me. What if I don't have an alternative? Maybe I shouldn't be criticizing this at all. But I think that's the reason that there is, even conversation around what to call things is, is interesting to discuss because it gets us a little bit closer to what we should be calling this stuff. If what we're trying to communicate is that no code helps get things done faster, we should elevate that fact in how much and how we name ourselves instead of objecting to code itself. A few replies on the tweet above suggest RAD, R-A-D, Rapid App Development. I kind of like that. I kind of like Rapid App Development. It's rad. Maybe it's because I grew up in the 90s. At least it has the benefit of communicating what no code stands out for: speed, simplicity, and prototyping. That may be a good place to start. If I was to take a vote today, RAD would probably be my vote. Between RAD, no code, and visual programming, Rapid App Development seems like it just conveys so much, right? It conveys that it doesn't really say, how we're going to get this done. It's just that it's going to be, it's a rapid process. And then you can also get into like, well, how rapid is rapid? It's rapid compared to code again. Again, we have to use code as kind of the baseline of what's possible. So yeah, that comes with problems too. I've already talked myself out of it. No code pits us against those from whom we desperately need buy-in. Okay, this is something that us no coders need to accept. We need buy-in from the developer community at large. We do. This has to be the Bubble, for example, or I hate to keep saying Bubble, but I guess I have to because that's my default tool. I forgot what I was going to say. Going back here. Imagine if QuickBooks tagline was accountants are useless. Yeah, exactly. Accountants are useless instead of organize and manage your business and variations thereof. Buy-in from an accountant's department, which is necessary in order to automate that work, would suddenly become much harder. What a smart point. What a smart point that is. If QuickBooks, like in order for QuickBooks to work correctly, you would have need to have had an accountant's input as to how that product should have been developed. Right? You couldn't have done that without the knowledge that an accountant had in that domain experience. Of course not. There's no way. In the same way that Bubble would have never been created without the insight of somebody who knows how to code, somebody who has an idea of software development. So this is perfect. Like this if this was the tagline, accountants would have been like, well, why am I going to help you if you're calling me useless? Ultimately, crucial processes in most departments are owned, approved, and developed by developers and or product managers, even if they're imagined or requested by all departments. The fact that the marketing teams can plug into APIs, for instance, via third-party tools is new. Before that, developers and PMs had two routes: point solutions to solve their problems, or bar that, building it themselves from scratch. Now there's a gray area between those two that's opened up. It's no longer an either-or proposition. How I envision the future of collaboration among developers, PMs, and visual developers, is where we position no code as either additive to existing tools or product in and of itself. It creates a middle ground between custom code and point solutions on that spectrum, with writing custom code on one end and purchasing a point solution on the other. It's a midpoint. It's a midpoint. That's an interesting way to think about it. It's a midway point between a tool like Salesforce, I guess, or Notion, and a app that needs to be coded with custom code, right? It's that halfway point where this lives. And I think all of the tools fall somewhere, all of the no-code tools fall somewhere on the spectrum between those two extremes. I think that's the way to think about it. And that also speaks to the usability versus customizability, or the ease of use learning curve on the the side that's closer to Salesforce versus the customizability on the other side of that, which is where I think Bubble lives. It's closer to something that's a little bit more custom, low code. There's a higher learning curve, but what you can do is a lot more to what you can do there. This article is like speaking to my soul right now. Point solutions augmented by automations tools that extend their functionality to our workflow. A horizontal solution that patches together a few automation tools to get to a workflow that works to our use case. A custom build that scope out parts that can be taken on by no code tools, and therefore doesn't require developer time. All of these should be considered before let's build it from scratch. Yeah, like, why do you need to build it from scratch? Why do you need to build it from scratch if there is a tool that is going to make you get to your answers faster? A lot of times when you're just starting with a new idea, you want to see first, is this even worth it? Is it even worth it? And you can answer that question on whether you want to go all in on some idea with a tool like Bubble a lot faster than learning how to code and then building it that way. Not that you may not have to do that someday, but it is a faster path to getting that question answered of, is this a good idea at all? And no one's going to be able to answer that for you except whatever users you're targeting. Ultimately, if we position ourselves against code, one of the two predominant options today, and the people's whose approval we need, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice. Instead, we should communicate the fact that no code is narrowing down the solutions that need to be built from scratch to situations in which it's truly necessary. And so we can do a good job when we do build it from scratch. Yes, 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 yes. And this was 2 years ago. We still don't know what to call ourselves. Good question. I don't know, but I hope it'll have the following characteristics. Be inclusive of developers and everyone else. Don't start with the word no. Yeah, exactly. Communicate that we're here to help developers get done faster so they can focus on higher value tasks. No more dev tickets for text changes on the website or simple API integrations. What I hope is that we take a hard think of what we call ourselves, because with every day and every new tool, it becomes harder and harder to switch. And frankly, I think we're stuck with no code, whether we like it or not. So I truly hope is what we overcompensate for our title by being more inclusive and thoughtful about how we fit in the broader tech world. Well said. I can't say it any better than this. I really can't. I can't say it any better than the way that this. Who is it? Let me give credit. I think is this Gumroad? Aaron Corenbuilt. Aaron Corenbuilt. I can't say it any better than Aaron has here. And let's see what this tweet is about. Let's follow this dude. This is back in February 2020 that he put this tweet. And they're still having the same conversation for the last 2 years. Dragon droppers. It's literally, yeah, it's the same conversation. It's the same conversation from 2 years ago. All right, I think that's all I have to say on this. I think that there is definitely a context component to how you describe yourself. Um, and I think that when we call ourselves no coders, we have to kind of be careful that like by saying it this way. And I'm a hypocrite. I do this too. I'm part of the problem just because I don't know what else to call it, and that this was kind of here before me. But we have to be careful that we're not pigeonholing ourselves into like excluding ourselves from the tech community is almost what it feels like the word no code does, or like I just feel like that gives it we're putting ourselves in a corner almost. And I hope that there's a better alternative that comes along, that someone comes up with that catches on, so we can stop saying no code, because I'm over it. I don't want to call myself this anymore. I don't want to refer to no code anymore. That's just what I think. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. and we'll have another topic to talk about.